Hey everybody, it's Angelo with Angelo's Workbench. Welcome back to video number 5 in the AMT Corvette ZR1 video series. Okay, I've got a little Vallejo acrylic metal color, silver. Comes pre-thinned for airbrushes, ready to go. Just gonna open that up, put a little in the airbrush. This stuff you gotta go very easy with it, very light, or else you end up with drips and runs. So I'm just gonna spray a very light coat. There we go. And then I'm gonna go from all 4 directions. I like their silver. I like the way it looks. It looks good. Those are set. Set those aside to cure. And I've got some parts on sticks here. These are those lights that go in the front of the car. Underneath the front bumper, they were chrome plated at first, along with the entire engine, which we stripped the chrome off of. There's that, looking much better. Chrome was definitely not what those headlights looked like. They weren't headlights technically; they were the driving light / fog light / turn signal. And they were not chrome. That looks perfect. We have a silver drive shaft. Alright, that takes care of the silver parts. Let's move on. Angelo's Workbench is proud to announce that this video series is sponsored by 9stepsindustries.com. They have sent me some nippers and some sanding sticks, an airbrush, a cleaning pot, some cutters, some tweezers, a whole bunch of tools, and they offer all these tools for sale at their website, 9stepsind.com. That's 9stepsind.com. You can go there and shop and use code ANGELO20 for 20% off your order today. I've been using this stuff through the filming of this video series, and I am thoroughly impressed. Go check them out at 9stepsind.com. Code ANGELO20 for 20% off today. So if you remember, I said I wanted to do the chassis in a gray, which I think I'm going to use a, this is my Stynylrez primer. I think that the primer will give me a very good looking gray. So rather than waste gray paint, I'm just going to use the Stynylrez primer. I'm going to raise you up a little bit here. It's always a challenge getting the camera just right for the spray booth. There we go. I remember when I was a kid, before I was airbrushing, painting the chassis always took so long. And now with the airbrush, you get nice, smooth coverage really quickly. It's definitely a valuable tool for model builders. And I always tell people in my beginner videos, as soon as you can, upgrade to an airbrush, because it will really benefit your building as far as your efficiency and your quality. You know, this yields a very nice finish. Once you're done, you get a very nice finish that you couldn't get with a brush. And there are guys, I see guys who brush paint, and there are guys who can brush paint and can get a great result with no brush strokes or everything, and I have tremendous respect for that, because it is definitely an art. I am not one of those guys. When I brush paint, I get strokes. So I don't brush paint anything bigger than a dime. You know, I might brush paint a carburetor here or there, but for the most part, I airbrush just about everything, and I like the result that it gives me. But again, this hobby, there's a different way. There's different ways to do different things, and there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for you. What do you enjoy? How do you enjoy building? I enjoy an assembly line type build where I organize all my parts by color, paint them all simultaneously, and then go through the assembly process. Some people like to build sub-assemblies. They say, hey, I like to just paint and build the engine, and then I like to paint and build the interior. And that's great. If that works for them and they're having fun, that's the key thing. As long as you're having fun in this hobby, do it the way you want to do it and don't pay attention to anybody else. Build for you and enjoy it. Okay, we'll be back. Well, since we're getting all of the metallic parts out of the way, figure I'll do the exhaust next. These are going to be done with steel. I like this 4-paint kit that they sell. I got this at Hobby Lobby, the Vallejo acrylic metal color. There's steel, there's aluminum, dark aluminum, and silver. And there's varying shades between them, so when you use them together and compare and contrast them, they look pretty cool. So this is going to have a gray undercarriage with some silver parts and some steel parts, and this will look marvelous. It adds to a realism effect. It's really handy on aircraft. I'm not a big aircraft builder, but I know the aircraft guys use these, especially the old airplanes that were metal, like polished aluminum aircraft. Those look great with these paints in varying shades on the different panels. It comes out really, really good. So I was thinking that I would be able to clip those exhaust headers, but I am not going to be able to. The little nub on there isn't big enough. So these are going to have to go on the paper and the tape. I will do that and meet you at the spray booth. Okay, here we go with the steel paint. Whoa, blowing it away here. There we go. I like to shoot this water base from a little ways away. Follow up with some air. There we go. Now that's ready to go in the dehydrator, which I have running right over here. And while those are curing in the dehydrator, I can do the parts that are on the sticks. There we go. I'll start with this exhaust here. Again, you have to think of your parts three-dimensionally. Get all of the nooks and crannies and from different angles so that you don't have any missing areas, any spots that you didn't paint. Because you will notice the spot that you didn't paint right after you're done cleaning your airbrush. Murphy's Law. And then you will have to re-dirty the airbrush to finish that part up. I try to look them over as closely as I can before I clean the airbrush. And that looks great. That's a nice color too. The Vallejo metals are really nice. It's a really good shade of steel. It'll look really, really good underneath the car. It's nice when you see a nice model car and you pick up and you look at the bottom of it, you go, wow, that's... I like having a well-painted and interesting underside of a model car because it just lends some realism to it, and it looks cool. And then if you so choose, you can display it on like a mirror or something shiny so that you can see up from the bottom in your display case when you're displaying the car and see the visual interest underneath the car, which is really cool. Okay, so I will pull the headers out of the dehydrator and spray the other side. And through video editing magic, here they are, ready to be sprayed. And they're done. That is such a nice looking steel. Into the dehydrator it goes to cure. Let's go back to the bench and prepare the interior. Here's a quick shot of how I clean my airbrush. So I have the 9 Steps Industries airbrush cleaner here. And I have put just a little bit of lacquer thinner in the airbrush. Basically just stick this in here like that, and then I have an old brush that I keep handy that's just for the purposes of doing this. Go in the paint cup and swirl it all around and spray the airbrush. And now I'm spraying the airbrush and all of the vapors are going inside this little airbrush cleaner, which is handy. That's it. It is now empty. And I've gotten all of the paint out. So now what I like to do is I like to clean the tip out by putting a little airbrush, a little thinner in. And then I take a paper towel and I plug up the end. And you blow the air back through the paint cup. And what that does is it back feeds the tip, gets all the paint out. And I can tell when my airbrush needs to be cleaned by this sound. And it's getting ready to need to be cleaned. I should hear the air rush a little bit more. So that's how I clean my airbrush in between colors. Okay, it is time to prepare the interior. I have decided to do the interior. I think that with the blue, and I have this black on the exterior trim, I think that with the blue, like a brown interior would look really good. They had this like saddle tan kind of interior that I think would look really good. But the center console and the dashboard and steering wheel and such was always black. So the only thing we have to paint is these seats and this interior tub, with the exception of this center console. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off the center console as best I can. And then I will spray the interior tub the color that we need. And we'll have essentially a two-tone interior. You know, the parts that are black and are supposed to be black will be black. And then the carpet, which would be the interior color, the tan or brown, whatever I end up picking. I haven't actually selected the paint from my paint stock yet. And this is always a little bit of a challenge when you're masking stuff like this in the interior. So you have to burnish the edges really good. The other thing that works in your favor is it's very difficult to see inside a model car from the outside because of the scale, because everything is so small. So while you do want to do a good job, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because it's very difficult to see. For example, this part that I'm masking right now is largely covered by the dashboard. The dashboard will make this next to impossible to see. So if I don't get a perfectly straight line between the center console and the carpet underneath the dashboard where nobody can see, I'm not too worried about it. I tell people all the time, you know, there's no such thing as a perfect build. And if you strive for perfection and redo everything until it is perfect, you will never finish a car. There's a lot of builders like that. And that's what they like. That's what they like. They like that striving for perfection, and they don't care that they never finish anything. And they are happy. They're doing the hobby the way they want to do it. And I know that some builders are inclined to make fun of them. And I say, you know what? They're enjoying the hobby the way that they want to enjoy it. They enjoy that strive for perfection. Me, not so much. I operate on the basically on the premise that I try my very best. I'm proud of everything that I create. I do as good a job as I can do. And then I move on to the next kit. And I learn and have learning experiences with the next kit and have fun with the next kit. I don't spend more than, I don't know. I don't think I've never spent continuous building. I've never spent more than a month on a kit. Typically, I can do a kit in 40 hours of 40 hours or less of actual working time. Now, depending on life, commitments, priorities, that kind of stuff, depends on how long it takes me to allocate that 40 hours to it. Sometimes it's a couple of months. Sometimes it's a year. I did a kit once. I did a Model Factory Hero kit. And, the same thing. I probably had 60 hours into it because it was a very complicated kit. But it took me 3 years to put that 60 hours in. And that video is on my channel, the Model Factory Hero Ferrari. And that's a great kit, and I had a real good time doing it. But again, it took me a long time because I would work on it some, and then I would go back to it because it was my first time ever doing a Model Factory Hero kit, working with the metal, and there's some very advanced, those are very advanced kits. There's some very advanced building techniques involved in completing those kits. So I would go back to it, work on it, and then I would get away from it, and I would go to something else. Something from Revell or something from AMT or something more traditional. And then I would go back to it, when I wanted to. So it took me a few years. And again, I wasn't striving for perfection, but I was trying to do as good a job as I could. And so I finished it up eventually. It took time. So everybody's got to enjoy the hobby the way they enjoy the hobby. And that's my thoughts. All right, so now my center console is masked off. The rest of this can be painted the brown or tan color. Now, there are a couple of things that will get blacked out eventually again, like this door handle here. That's going to have to be black, and I will just do that hand-painted after. Those pedals will have to be black, and I will do that hand-painted after. These little handles on these storage compartments will be black, and again, I will hand-paint those after. And this little strap, I think, was body color, but that little clasp in the middle will be black. And then I don't remember if the Bose speakers had interior color grills or not. I think they might have. So they might be the brown or tan color anyway. So that's it. We're going to go paint these seats and paint this interior. Before I paint this interior, one thing I wanted to mention, and you need to do this when you're building your kits, you need to paint the underside of the interior tub depending on how the kit is as far as the undercarriage. Depends on how much of it you have to paint. So if you look here, I can see all of this through the bottom. So if you don't paint this, you leave this bare plastic. In this case, it would be a dark green, which maybe isn't such a big deal, but I will still paint it. But this would need to be painted. If this was a molded in white kit, you would have a black undercarriage or a gray undercarriage, and then you would be able to see the bare white styrene through this hole, and that wouldn't be good. So when you're painting your interior tub, be mindful of your underneath. Sometimes I'll mark how much needs to be painted. Usually I'll just paint the whole thing, because then you can see, you won't be able to see anything as far as the original styrene. If I paint the whole thing. But technically I wouldn't have to paint back here. And sometimes I stick an Angelo's Workbench sticker back here in the areas where it's buried. If anybody ever takes it apart someday, they'd be like, oh, look at this. Maybe they'll find my channel. Who knows? So that's it. Well, let's go paint the interior. For the interior, I am using Model Master Acrylic Tan. Looks like this. There it is. Model Master Acrylic Tan. That's what I'm using. Looks close enough to me to approximate what I remember seeing in these cars. It's going to take a couple of coats, I think. Gotta remember to paint the tops of the doors. Here's coat number one. Coat number one is looking pretty good. If you go light with your coat on the seat surfaces, cracks from the leather will still show through. And that's kind of cool. Looks really good. And that's a very good approximation of that color. And then those controls on the edges of the seat were black. So I will hand paint those after. I'm very impressed. Again, I know I said it in the beginning video, but very impressed with the detail on these seats from AMT. These seats look amazing. Very impressed. The seats look great. And they've got everything molded in there very nicely. The texture of the leather is molded in perfectly. Good looking seats. Just ran out of paint. Time to get some more. And we're refilled. Putting a second coat on that seat, I had missed a spot underneath the bottom front. And now it's time for our final coat in the interior. Very good, very good. This will dry a few shades darker and will look really look the part from the colors that were available back then. And it'll go really nice with this blue too. The blue and the black looks really good on the outside, and then the blue and the tan for the inside. They look amazing next to each other. I just set these seats near the body just a second ago. Color combination looks great. Here, I'll give you a peek. The color combination looks amazing. It's very good, very good. I'm really pleased with my color selection on this build. It's looking good. Right now, I'm just looking these seats over, making sure that I got all the nooks and crannies and that they look good. This seat needs another coat. Still got the tan in the brush. I'll give this seat another coat. Again, thinking of the part three-dimensionally. And that seat is done. Okay, that does it for that. Let's go back to the bench. Okay, now we just need to remove this masking tape from this center console. See how we did here. Needs a little touch up around the edges, but that will be easy to do. And I will touch that up around the edges with a brush. But for the most part, we have a black console. And there are some other parts that have to be black in there, as I mentioned before, the door handles and the handles for the little storage compartments behind the seats. But basically, we have reached that magical point where all of the parts for this kit are painted. So we will begin assembly next week. We'll start putting this thing together. Come on back. Thanks for tuning in and watching. I hope you enjoyed video number 5 in the AMT Corvette ZR1 video series. Tune in next week where we'll get to work putting this thing together and move toward completion. Go ahead and click that like and comment and subscribe and share. Do all that stuff. Leave me some questions. I love to hear from you guys. Check me out also on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, all as Angelo's Workbench. I look forward to seeing you all next week.